This might be a hard pill to swallow, but life as a short man is pointless. You have to work 10 times harder to get the same amount of progress on anything you do as a tall guy would. And unless you can just get lucky and find a great job or just get into the right business at the right time or find the right girl, life is going to be way, way harder for you.
I discussed the following topic from a place of belief, but I understand not everybody will agree, and you can just look at it as a theory of social anthropology.
I believe that short people were created by the elites over the course of many generations. Short people and short men in particular serve several purposes: to be exploited, to be compared with, to be bullied, to be simps, and to produce more wage slaves. Height is the physical manifestation of generational prosperity. It is the universal indicator of success, and it is the permanent physical branding of wealth and power. Elites literally look down on us as the permanent underclass. When you're tall, you have a superior foundation, and it may take longer to build, it may take longer to get there, more resources, more work, everything, more pain, the struggles of growing pains. But when you do finally get there, you're like Mother Russia. You take a lot longer to develop, you grow for a lot longer time, but when you do get there, you are much grander for it than the one who finished developing when they were still in elementary school like me. Tall people are more likely to have reached their full potential, both in their brain and their body.
Just wanted to interject and say that I understand that there's always going to be outliers and statistical anomalies when it comes to this kind of phenomenon, and I hope to be one of those outliers or statistical anomalies one day, and that's what you should hope for too.
How does that make you feel as a short guy, knowing that you probably didn't reach your full potential? You probably could have grown more because short people have less money and they have less resources, so they feed their kids not as well. And then their kids, even though you have short genes, you probably would have been taller. So height leads to less wealth, which leads to smaller height over generations. There's a thing called epigenetics, where over generations of breeding, the people that have the most resources get the best outcomes because they feed their children the best. They have the best education, the cleanest water, the cleanest food, cleanest air, and over time they have positive genetic mutations that build over generations and make them even more superior than the lower classes. Whereas the opposite happens with the lower classes. It's negative epigenetics. Over generations, you have more allergies, more respiratory issues, more chemical sensitivities, less growth, until you have a growing disparity and stratification between classes that is physically manifested in the size of the human body. So epigenetics is part of that exploitation aspect of the height disparity and height privilege. It's that over time, we become more weak, more vulnerable, more submissive, and in turn, more obedient to the elites. And comparison plays into that too, because they just love to use us as a benchmark to feel more powerful, to lord over us, and make us feel inferior and weak and small. And the bigger that disparity is, the happier they are. And when bullying comes into the picture, bullying is a source of sadistic pleasure for the towering elites that look down on us from on high. They tower above us as we look up to them, and we quiver with fear because we know that there's absolutely nothing that we can do to defend ourselves from their superior might. And we just sit there and take it because we're defenseless and can't fight back. And that's exactly how they want it to be. And they want it to get worse over time. And that's why we have all these chemicals in our food and our water and our products, because these chemicals are made to stunt the growth of the lower classes. How? Well, one example, the one that comes to mind is parabens. Parabens are a chemical that accelerates the release of sexual hormones, whether you're a boy or a girl. If you're exposed to parabens at a young age, you will start to release those hormones, which is a positive feedback loop. So those hormones start, which sends more signals through your endocrine system that tell your body to release more of the hormones, which in turn sparks off a precocious puberty, which leads to the fusing of the growth plates at a younger age, meaning that your body doesn't have as much time to grow. In addition, your brain doesn't have as much time to grow. So you're less intelligent, you're less tall, And on top of that, those chemicals also have other effects, like some of them make your shoulders not grow as wide, they make your limbs shorter, they make your hands smaller. These chemicals almost never make you bigger because that's exactly not what they want to do.
They've also got chemicals that warp the hormones in your body and the shape of your body as it develops, such as xenoestrogens that may make men appear more feminine. And that plus epigenetics over generations can also affect the shape of the body's development. So perhaps males might start having smaller shoulders and broader hips and have more feminine features.
This experiment is a sadistic plot to make you smaller and easier to control and overpower. And it has a psychological effect because when you look up at the people that are in charge of you, you feel small, you feel like infantile, you feel like a child that has to obey their parents because, please don't hurt me, mommy, I'm so small and weak. You know, there's an old African saying that applies here: the strong bully and the weak submit. That is the law of nature. And that could never be more true than it is today. Not only do tall guys tower over the little stunted runt and call you a manlet, but not only are women more attracted to them, but they get all of the best opportunities in life. They were born into the best situation. They get all the best connections, and they get away with a lot more. That's why schools side with the bullies most of the time, because usually these football playing jocks that tower over the little guy, they have powerful parents that will threaten the school. They'll threaten to pull out their donation. They'll threaten to get their lawyer. And the school doesn't want any part of that. So they say, okay. Or the other reason they side with the bully is they don't want to lose their star football player. So they will let this inferior little runt get beaten down and abused by this tall god of a man that all the women swoon over. Meanwhile, the women are watching from the sidelines as this tall, dominant alpha male asserts his power over his lessers. And they think, oh, that is so hot. Oh, I want you, big man. Teach that little bitch boy a lesson. Put the little bitch boy in his place. It's something that goes all the way back into prehistoric times that is ingrained into the minds and instincts of women. Not all women, but most women, especially feminine ones that have large assets, because that reproduces more estrogen in their body, which makes them in turn have more of these physical desires towards a man who's a superior provider and protector. But it's not just about protecting, it's about dominating, because the man who dominates has the most resources. He takes the resources from those beneath him, and those beneath him are nothing but servants. And when you benefit over many generations from the people below you serving you and enriching you by exploiting them, you end up wanting more of that over time. So you think, oh, how can I make more of these submissive small wage slaves? Oh, I know. I'll control their food and water. In the past, it was all about nutrition. They made sure that the peasants had the least variety in food options, which stunted their growth. But as the elites were having the most nutritious upbringing that let them reach their full potential, they're breeding with other elites who are also tall and superior, and that epigenetics plays in, and over time, it compounds and compounds until we get where we are today, where you have wealth consolidating into the hands of fewer and fewer people, and those fewer and fewer people are getting taller and taller with each generation, and each generation of tall people, if they're not already rich for whatever reason, they're becoming rich because they're getting all these opportunities through sports scholarships. Everybody wants them. They happen to be also more intelligent, so they get all the opportunities both academically and financially. And on top of that, when they get into the workplace, everyone looks up at them and says, ooh, wow, you're so big and strong. You must be a leader. You must be the best of the best. We should listen to you. So that way, if a guy who's like 5'3" has an idea and tries to present it and is below everyone else and says, I have an idea, because you have less confidence when you're looking up at everyone your whole life, getting bullied and being told you're inferior. And you look up at everyone and say, I think we should do this and this and this. And they all say, oh, who cares what you think? Or they just talk over you and don't even listen. But meanwhile, the tall girl or the tall guy who comes from a wealthy background, who got in with nepotism and has just usually gets right in with a higher position than you, they take your idea, let's say they take your idea and say the exact same thing, and now all of a sudden, oh, wow, that is a wonderful idea. We should put you in charge of everything. You're so smart. You're so powerful. Meanwhile, the little guy is like, but that was my idea. And then the big one is like, just looks down.
Shut up, little bitch. I'm in charge.
So that covers exploitation, comparison, and sadistic bullying. What other purposes do you have as a short person? Oh, I know. One thing they want you to do if you're a lower class wage slave is produce more wage slaves. So they want you to give up on your hopes and dreams, get a basic dead-end menial job, be put in your place in society, and go off and have children with somebody who's also lesser than. And meanwhile, if you're a guy and you find some girl who's also short, she's going to be constantly pining after the tall alpha males that run the world. And she's probably going to leave you someday. And the kids are going to grow up in split homes. They're going to grow up divorced, which leads to less positive outcomes, which leads to, instead of a dual income household, you've got separate income households. And you've got a mom who doesn't have time to cook nutritious food anymore. So they're giving them all TV dinners and Hot Pockets and fast food, which makes the problem worse because that's full of chemicals that stunt the growth and it's void of nutrition. Meanwhile, the dad doesn't know how to cook either, so the kids are kind of screwed either way. None of them have enough time to give their kids the proper attention they need because they're having to work 60 hours a week just to survive. And as the economy gets worse, just as they want it to, you're stuck with less and less resources for each coming generation of the lower class, and the lower class grows in number with each generation. So you have the upper class getting taller and shrinking in number with each generation, and you have the lower class getting smaller and growing in number. So the idea is they want to produce more wage slaves and more consumers because that further enriches them and gets them higher and consolidates wealth further. And it gets worse with each generation. But the truth is, in evolution, size is directly connected with success. If a species has abundant food and is very successful, they will start to grow in size over generations. If a species is experiencing famine, poverty, or a non-ideal habitat, they are likely to shrink with each generation. We've seen this all over the animal kingdom. Another thing we see in the animal kingdom is a hierarchy, going back hundreds of millions of years in all species of mammals, but many other animals as well. It's the largest one that controls the rest. It's the largest one that dominates the rest, the alpha. There's a lot of people like to say, oh, there isn't alphas. But where I live, there are turkeys everywhere, and there's always an alpha, and the alpha is always the biggest one. And I constantly see the alpha bullying the smaller male turkeys and taking all the women. And you just see this pattern repeated and repeated. And that's exactly what they want. They want more power, more pleasure, and to make you feel even lesser than. But there's something even more interesting going on here. After you look at the nutritional disparity of nobles versus peasants throughout history, and then you look at how that evolved to today, and when you see the peasant class using all these chemicals and eating all these processed foods devoid of nutrition, and you see the upper class having their own ranches and farms, having farm-to-table food, getting all possible nutrients and minerals, getting vitamin B injections, and what I see is something even more complex. We see an intentional division of the human species into a subspecies and a dominant species. And the dominant species is small in number, but superior in size and intelligence, attractiveness, and every other way. And the subspecies only exists to serve the dominant species. So the goal of all these chemicals is to stunt the growth of the lower class, to divide us into a small, submissive servant class and a tall, successful, dominant class. Basically, you are what you eat. Garbage in, garbage out. Subscribe for more validating Heightpill content, and check out my previous video about how the elites want to keep the poor small and weak. And I also go over several examples that reinforce my point of tall, rich people that were born into wealth and privilege and fall into easy success in life. So check it out.